under the missile strikes, with all the instability and uncertainty and often sluggishness of our partners in terms of providing us with the support, Ukrainian defense industry has grown 35 times in the last 4 years. This is anything short of a miracle. Ukraine today is the drone superpower of the world. We are trendsetter in the sphere of drones, counter-drone systems. It's one thing to control or to at least watch one crazy man with a red button, but it's a completely different ball game if the huge nuclear arsenal falls into the hands of tens of different groups in Russia, which could be the result of Russia's defeat.
Ukraine is sending military experts to the Gulf countries to train local forces to shoot down attack drones. For years, Kiev was asking the world for air defense. Now countries that face Iranian-type drones are turning to Ukraine for help and battlefield experience. So is the balance starting to shift? In the studio with me is Yuriy Sak, former advisor to Ukraine's Minister of Defense. Yuriy, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me again, yes.
So the United States is now asking Ukraine for military support and assistance. Do you think that's kind of shifting the balance and slowly getting back the cards into Ukrainian hands, I would say, because Ukrainian kind of cheap solutions to neutralize the threat comparatively to Patriots that cost millions of dollars, I would say. I don't know the exact numbers, but that's hundreds of millions of dollars. Does that mean that right now Pentagon is actually seeking for Ukrainian help?
Well, absolutely. I think the student is gradually becoming a professor. So if you look at where we were in 2022 in February, and we literally leapfrogged into another era of modern warfare, and with that we've developed and evolved our own defense industry. And as we can see now, Ukrainian expertise, which is combat proven, unfortunately and tragically, Ukraine has become the laboratory for modern weapon systems. And there are two countries essentially who have that experience today. It's Ukraine and the aggressor, Russia. So, of course, those countries who are our allies, who are our partners, and we've been saying this to them all along, even before we were capable of producing certain types of weapons large scale, but we always said we were open to share the experience from this tragic war, because we see on a daily basis how modern warfare evolves. And of course, the defense industry, both in Ukraine and globally, needs to keep up with that progress.
Yuriy, as I said in my intro, that the Ukrainian team has already on the 9th of March moved to the Middle East to assist and to help and to teach. Do you think that somehow the crisis, war in the Middle East would affect Western weapon deliveries to Ukraine?
Well, there is that risk, of course, and President Zelensky mentioned it openly a few days ago. We're seeing that the blitzkrieg of the US and Israeli campaign did not happen. So we are already into the second week of this military campaign that the US and Israel is conducting against Iran. We see that Iran is not willing to surrender or capitulate. Moreover, we see that they are ramping up their own attacks, their retaliatory strikes, and not just on Israel, but on other countries in the Gulf. So this is beginning to look like something that's not going to end anytime soon, which means that the stockpiles of air defense systems, those systems which are predominant in the Gulf, will dry up sooner or later. And if you take into account the fact that the kind of attacks that Iran is launching are carbon copy of the Russian combined missile and drone attacks on Ukraine, you can see that, the existing air defense system in the Gulf countries is not going to be able to cope with the barrage of missiles and specifically drones. This is, of course, why the Ukrainian teams have already been dispatched, and I'm sure their expertise will be invaluable.
If Ukraine is sharing their own expertise and experience on the battlefield, is Russia doing the same with Iran, North Korea, and China?
Well, absolutely, and we have seen that, they're not even keeping it secret. We have seen that North Korean troops are actually taking active part in the hostilities along the front lines. We know for a fact that there is a very close ties between Iran and Russia. The first Shaheds that we saw in the skies of Ukraine were actually delivered to Russia from Iran, and then by now, Russia has been able to actually set up their own production lines, and they are, spitting out anything near 3,000 a month. So that's a huge number, and they've improved them considerably. So this, to use like the old cliche, there is the axis of good and the axis of evil. And there is partnership and exchange and transfer of knowledge between the countries which comprise the axis of good, which is Ukraine sharing our expertise with our friends. And of course, Russia as an aggressor is sharing their expertise with other tyrannies and rogue countries like Iran, like North Korea. We cannot actually, I think, pigeonhole China into this category because the situation with China is a bit more subtle. But we understand, of course, that Russia benefits from components for its defense industry, which it gets from China. And I wouldn't be surprised if, below the radar, there is some exchange of information happening because, of course, China has its eyes on Taiwan and they can also benefit from the knowledge that Russia can give to them.
Last year, Ukrainian president said that 40% of the weapon on the battlefield, it's a Ukrainian-made production. So it's made in Ukraine. Is that true, or is that share is much more right now? And just to be more specific, what kind of a weapon we are producing right now?
As a Ukrainian, I am extremely proud of what we have achieved as a nation in terms of our defense industry in the last 4 years. For your understanding and for the viewers' understanding, we, got off from a very poor start in 2022. Just to give you a practical example, in 2022, in February, we were capable of producing one self-propelled artillery system, Bogdana, a month. Fast forward to today, we are producing 30 to 40 a month. And this means that in that segment, the production of battle-tested, self-propelled artillery systems, NATO standard 155 caliber, we are now competitors on a global level. Because, like, for example, the French analogs, the Caesars, they are also good, but they're not as good as the Ukrainian ones because of the fast feedback loop that we get from the front lines. The stuff that we produce gets improved very, very fast. So I'm very proud that, we've, under the missile strikes, with all the instability and uncertainty and often sluggishness of our partners in terms of providing us with the support, Ukrainian defense industry has grown 35 times in the last 4 years. This is anything short of a miracle. We today produce, something which everybody talks about, of course, are drones. Right? And the portfolio of Ukrainian drones is very vast. Reconnaissance drones, loitering munitions, deep strike drones, FPV drones, unmanned ground vehicles, which are used for, logistics, transportation, rescue missions, sea drones, naval drones, which have helped us throw out the Russian fleet from the Black Sea area. So without exaggeration, and I've heard this so many times, and I've heard this being said not by Ukrainians, right, but by other partners from other countries, Ukraine today is the drone superpower of the world. We are trendsetter in the sphere of drones, counter-drone systems, like, for example, interceptors, which are now the buzz of the day. So I think we have to be proud of what we have achieved. We are producing not just drones, because we are producing armored vehicles. We've mentioned already Bogdanas. There are also Kozak, the armored vehicle personnel carrier. There are different types of ammunition. There are electronic warfare systems.
Flamingo?
Pardon? Flamingo, yes. We have a very active long-range missile program, which is kept very low profile and secret because of the obvious reasons, but yet hopefully at some point in the near future we will be able to conduct more powerful strikes deeper into Russia using our own ballistic missiles. And this is all defensive weapons, right? We're not, the viewers have to understand that we are producing these weapons as a country that wants peace. We have not started this war, and we want this war to end more than any other nation on this planet. But we understand, unfortunately, that for us to make that happen, we need to be strong and we need to make it impossible for Russia to conduct this war. And we can do that by developing our defense industry. So the figure that you've said at the beginning, that 40% of weapons that are used on the front lines by our soldiers, I think that's today we've exceeded that number. It's even higher. I mean, President mentioned 60%. Prime Minister recently said it's 50%, but it's huge. If you look back at 2022, we've had to ask for everything. You remember that Germany was sending us helmets, like for long 4 or 6 weeks. And Germany actually was criticized for failing to deliver them on time. We had almost nothing. Our stockpiles in February 22 would have lasted us for 2.5 months. There was nothing. And most of the stuff that we had, of course, was legacy Soviet systems, whether it's howitzers, whether it's tanks, armored vehicles, anti-tank systems, everything, right? So we have leapfrogged. We are now integrating into the global Western defense ecosystem. And I think in that aspect, the future is very bright for Ukraine.
How far away we're from our own air defense system, like Patriot?
Well, I'm not sure if that's, with all due respect, but if that's the right way to put the question, because the development of a system such as Patriot, right, in an ideal scenario, takes about 20 plus years. Same goes for systems like NASAMS or SAMP-T. So these are comprehensive, high-end, very sophisticated systems. And of course, systems like Patriots are the only ones capable of intercepting ballistic missiles. So the question is, should we as a country aspire to actually develop our own Patriot system? Should we try to produce our own F-35? I think the answer, the logical one, would be no. I think what is more advantageous for us is to actually use the expertise that we have and to plug ourselves in. And this is happening even without us asking for it, because, as you said, the team of our air defense experts is now in the Gulf helping Western alliance protect their assets and their military bases.
From Iran, Shahed, but not from rockets.
Exactly, but the point I'm trying to make is this. The modern warfare is different. The attacks have changed, and today it's always a combined type of attack. Missiles plus drones. So we need to just be on good terms with our partners, and we can close the issue with the sort of lower end interceptors and air defense systems, and we can contribute to this new air defense architecture that will be our response, our mutual response to the new arising threats. So Ukraine will deliver this part of this global architecture of air defense, whereas other partners could deliver, what we lack, like Patriot systems or missiles for them and other sophisticated air defense systems. Because, like I said, I don't think it is reasonable for us to aspire and spend resources and time to develop something that already exists.
Yuriy, my question was, what type of a weapon we're critically lack nowadays? And I thought you're going to say it's an air defense.
Well, yes.
Is that still true? But we don't have to produce it still.
Well, look, in one of his recent statements, Zelensky said that he appealed to our partners with a request to provide licenses for producing missiles for Patriot systems, for example, right? Now, that's a very, very difficult issue because Patriot system is the crown jewel of the US defense industry. It is a very, very well-guarded secret, and there's only one country in the world, Japan, who almost by coincidence, but they have that license and they produce the PAC-3 missile packages for Patriot systems. There are other countries like Poland, Germany, who produce some components which are used in the Patriot, because Patriot system, of course, is not just a launcher, right? It's an air defense ecosystem which uses advanced radars, which uses advanced hypersonic trackers for the ballistic missiles, and so on and so forth. So we can become part of that ecosystem, and I think the localization of the production of some elements, even for Patriot systems, can be done in Ukraine, because indeed, the two things that we badly lack today, weapon system which we need to protect our people and cities, are the large air defense systems and missiles for them, and longer deep strike capabilities such as ATACMS or Storm Shadows in sufficient quantities, or Tomahawks, which we're asking from our partners now. So yes, we can become part of the, say, Patriot ecosystem and produce some parts of it, but I don't think even though I must say, I've met with, for example, missile producers from Australia who said that, they have the capability and they could be producing an alternative that still could be used by Patriot systems. But whether it's realistic, I'm not sure.
I was among those naive people who were expecting Tomahawk be delivered to Ukraine, to be honest. Just a note.
Yeah, but look, don't be naive, because it will just take time. We'll get them sooner or later. This was the case with everything, with howitzers, with HIMARS systems, with Abrams tanks, with F-16s. So Tomahawks are on the way. It just takes a bit longer than we all wanted.
To what extent is our Western allies financing our military production, and what percentage is Ukraine covering on its own?
Yeah, so the capacity of the Ukrainian defense sector, and to help everybody visualize what Ukrainian defense sector is, it's 900 plus companies. 800 plus of these are privately owned. 450 of these 800 are involved in drone production or counter-drone systems or electronic warfare. So all of this taken together with, 100 state-owned enterprises, the capacity is to produce weapon systems of different kinds for $55 billion. Now, the government, unfortunately, can afford much less, about 1/3. I think last year the government spent about 16 billion on procurement of Ukrainian weapons. So there is a big gap, and there are capacities which are standing idle, unused. And of course, there are a number of factors that influence that. Short of funds can be closed, for example, by the opening of the controlled export. Short of funding is partially closed by arrangements such as the well-known Danish model, whereby foreign governments provide funding for Ukrainian producers of weapons, and the weapons that are produced are then sent to the Ukrainian front, to the Ukrainian soldiers. So that's been fairly successful, and I think last year this or alternative versions of this Danish model have generated over $6 billion US. But it still is not enough, because the capacity, I will repeat, is we've been able to scale up our capacities and capabilities in terms of defense industry very fast, and hopefully the opening of the controlled export will go towards, even taking it even further.
What is the best alternative for us to make military production inside Ukraine in a safer places where Russians could not reach the site, or to make it together with our Western partners abroad?
Well, I think the answer to this would be somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in Poland?
No. What I mean is this. When I was advising the Minister of Strategic Industries, it was then Alexander Commission, he came up with this idea, and it really was embraced by the Ukrainian defense industry, that our aspiration, our long-term objective is to become the arsenal of the free world. Once we were confident that we could invent out of necessity, I must admit, right, because of the tragic war. But once we saw how great are Ukrainian engineers, how great are Ukrainian inventors in coming up with solutions to the challenges of the modern warfare, it was obvious that defense industry base in the future should become Ukraine's locomotive of our economic development. So this is why we want to be the arsenal of the free world. Now, if we allow our defense industry to migrate west, well, I have to say that according to my knowledge, right now, this process is happening, but it's not large scale, right? So maybe 10-15% of drone producers have opened some sort of alternative facilities in countries like Slovakia, Poland, and the Baltic states.
In Germany.
In Germany. So sometimes it's in the form of a joint venture, sometimes it's just opening like new legal entities. But we have to make sure, if we want to become the arsenal of the free world, if we don't want to waste that potential, we must not allow the brain drain to happen. We must ensure that the intellectual property rights stay in Ukraine. We must ensure that this ecosystem, the gravity center, is in Ukraine. We have to understand, of course, the concern of some producers who have to relocate their manufacturing and production lines westward because of security reasons. I don't think there's any Ukrainian producer who has not been hit once or twice by drones or missiles. So when they're faced with a dilemma, whether we stop production or we move somewhere safer, better that they move than stop production, right? But we need to find that balance where, on the one hand, we relocate some of our production lines and facilities westward, and by doing so plug ourselves into the Western ecosystem, defense industry ecosystem. But at the same time, we have to really be careful with how much we allow to migrate west.
During the NATO exercises in the Baltic region, Ukrainians who joined that exercises together with Estonian soldiers, they have demonstrated how vulnerable NATO's air defense and drone capabilities are. So do you think that was a shock for our NATO allies, that they are not as strong as they are trying to persuade the world they are?
Without a doubt, but that's not, they still are a superpower. For example, the United States of America, their army, their capacities, and we can see, the force of the strikes that they take now on Iran is overwhelming. But of course, we've said it many times that the nature of modern warfare has changed, and when a group of Ukrainian drone pilots was able to take out a couple of brigades of NATO army in these hedgehog exercises that took place in Estonia, of course it was a shock, and I think there were reports that generals, US and NATO generals who were present on those trainings, they couldn't actually stop wondering how that was possible. So it just, again, it's about us sharing the experience that we have with our friends and partners, and they will have to, and we're already seeing that, the Western countries, the US, the countries in Europe, they look at what is happening at Ukraine, and they are changing their own approach to defense spending, for example, right? Because they, for example, understand that the winner in a modern war is not the country that has more fighter jets parked in their military airports or more tanks parked in their warehouses. The winner in a modern warfare is the country that can use asymmetric warfare, which is what we are good at. Like Ukraine is now setting trends in this. And asymmetric warfare means agility, being fast, coming up with new solutions. Innovation cycle is really accelerated. So it's no longer about the large legacy systems. That's why European countries will now be reconsidering how much they spend on tanks and submarines and jets and HIMARS systems, as opposed to spending stuff on counter-drone, like cheap solutions. You've said that a 3,000 interceptor can take out, a Shahed drone, as opposed to a couple of million Patriot missiles, right? Mm-hmm. So we have become, we are firmly, as a country, we are firmly on the global defense industry map today, and the exercises in Estonia have demonstrated that the experience of our troops is invaluable and is in very high demand by the NATO country. So which kind of makes us a de facto NATO member anyway.
Yeah, that was my question. Isn't that surprising you that the NATO countries are asking for advice from not a NATO member, Ukraine?
It's very natural and logical. This is the largest war since the World War II. There's no other country which has that kind of experience of the war of this intensity. So it was natural that sooner or later they will come asking us for advice and for support, which is great because we began responding to this large-scale invasion by begging our partners to send us some weapons. And now, 4 years down the line, we have become their partner in building a new global security architecture. So we are an equal partner now. We're not just a recipient of their support, of their funds and military equipment, which is I will repeat, it's unfortunate. I'm sure we'd rather be, great in something else, not in weapons. In IT, I don't know, in anything.
Whatever.
In cryptocurrency, but, there's no evil without good. And unfortunately, this war has made Ukraine a real solid player on the global defense market.
I'm just worried that the Ukraine could benefit from it as much as our Western partners. From this kind of a collaboration, that everything that you just explained to us.
Well, I think it's in our own hands, in the hands of the architects of how we do business and partnership with our partners. There's the Ministry of Defense, there's the Cabinet of Ministers, and I think there are right people in those institutions today who understand that this partnership has to be mutually beneficial.
I want to refer to what Finnish President Alexander Stubb said recently, that a week of military action in Iran cost $40 billion. This is the EU's annual spending on aid to Ukraine. Do you think that if going back and to see this more than 4 years of a full-scale war, that actually all the decisions about air defense systems sending to Ukraine, it was more like a political question, not a technical one?
Every time we've asked for something, it was always political and always slow. It's not even so much, in my view, about the cost of the stuff that we would receive. It's about on the one hand, the fear of escalation on the part of our partners. Russia kept talking about the red lines, and every time Russia would mention the risk of crossing those red lines, our partners would scratch their heads and think, okay, if we give Ukraine this system, they'll definitely do something to cross the red line, and Russia will then retaliate probably with nuclear strikes. So this was fear number one. Fear number two, I think this is more of probably a conspiracy theory, but I think our partners in the West, the key global players, have no idea what to do with Russia once it disintegrates and once it's no longer run by one crazy war criminal, Putin, right? So it's one thing to control or to at least watch one crazy man with a red button, but it's a completely different ball game if the huge nuclear arsenal falls into the hands of tens of different groups in Russia, which could be the result of Russia's defeat on the battlefield, right? So there are reasons why the West have not been always on time with the support that they provided us. But look, on the other hand, we have to be grateful, because if it wasn't for the support of our Western allies, I don't think where we would be by now.
At the beginning, you said, Yuriy, that about how long the Middle East war could last. I don't want to speculate on that for how long, to be honest. Probably for months, could be for years, I don't know. But still, how it could affect Moscow and Tehran relationship? In what way? Because when you're opening a newspapers, everybody discussing whether Russia gonna benefit or whether it's not. And I'm just lost in thoughts and ideas.
Russia is already benefiting because the oil prices have spiked, and if this military campaign in the Middle East lasts longer, that will result in more disruption in the global oil supply chains. So, of course, that will be reflected in the global rise in the prices for oil. That will benefit Russia. So that's a definite benefit for Russia. Another benefit for Russia, of course, is the fact that the US and other allies will have to divert their resources, including air defense missiles, to the Gulf instead of Ukraine. So, and actually, we've been in that situation after the terrorist acts by Hamas on Israel on October 7th, 2 years ago, right? There was immediate decision by Pentagon to divert some of the artillery. I remember it was, I think, 155 caliber artillery that was already actually waiting somewhere in Rzeszów airport to be dispatched to Ukraine. But then last minute it was diverted to Israel because, the commitments, the security commitments of the US to Israel are, of a different nature than those to us. So these are the risks. But at the same time, I think there will be some good that will come out of it as well. Because we are seeing how overnight everybody got very agitated about how can we use Ukraine's expertise. I've been involved in conversations in the last couple of days with investors from the Gulf countries, from the Emirates, from different other parts of the world, actually, who are they are looking at what's happening in the Middle East. They know that the solution is in Ukraine, and they want to participate in the booming development of the Ukraine's defense industry because they know that will benefit the world. So nobody will ever be able to say now how long this will last. It looks like the initial plans of the Pentagon have not materialized. We're not seeing large-scale protests of Iranian people, in the streets trying to overthrow the Revolutionary Guard. We're seeing that the Iranian regime is still standing. Moreover, just yesterday they've issued a threat to Donald Trump. So this is beginning to look like something that will last for some time, and we'll have to adapt to this new reality, and we'll have to and the more we support our friends, the more they will reciprocate, put it that way. So we need to be generous with the helping hand that we extend to our friends in the Gulf now, because it's always a two-way street. We'll have their backing as well. It could be asymmetrical. We can send them experts; they can send us money to build more instead to scale up our defense industry.
Yeah, that's what I said about the benefit.
There could be a Danish model. There could be a Dubai model now, right? That would tap into the almost infinite financial resources of the Gulf countries, and they can arrive here in our defense industry and help us build what we will build. And another minus for Russia, because we've talked about benefits, but another disadvantage or big blow to Russia is, of course, something that's been said many times already. First Syria, then Venezuela, now Iran. So Russia globally
Cuba next
is portrayed as a country that betrays its allies, and long term, I think that will help us achieve our goal, which is establish peace on terms that are favorable to Ukraine.
Yuriy, what is happening in the Middle East? Is that a war or military operation?
I would say that this is an irrelevant question, because what we see and the facts are that there are military strikes on both military facilities and civilian infrastructure on both sides So these legal technicalities, they are more important for separate countries who are involved in this. Like, for example, the US needs to use the right terminology because it depends whether the Congress has to be involved or not. What we are seeing is a dangerous escalation involving more and more countries, and we have to hope and pray that this ends sooner rather than later, regardless of what it is called.
Yuriy, thank you so much for your insights. That explaining to our viewers about military defense industry in Ukraine and about its potential, and it's huge. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.